Russian President Vladimir Putin hosting Wang Yi for talks in St. Petersburg today. China's top diplomat is on a 4-day trip to Russia, where both nations are discussing security matters as they look to strengthen ties. Mr. Wang arrived in Russia on Monday. Over the last few days, he has held talks with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, as well as the Kremlin Security Council secretary. The leaders discussed the Ukraine war and said any attempts to settle the crisis without accounting for Russia's interest would be futile. That's as Moscow seeks continued support for the war. China has faced criticism from the West for failing to condemn outright Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with Beijing refraining from taking sides. This trip is Wang Yi's second visit to Moscow since February. It's seen to pave the way for President Putin's high-profile trip to Beijing next month, where he will meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping. This will be Mr. Putin's first trip abroad since the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against him. And for more, Dasha Chernyshova joins us live from Moscow. Dasha, what did Mr. Putin and Mr. Wang discuss during their meeting today?
Well, that's right. The two sides have met in St. Petersburg at the Konstantinovsky Palace, and we understand that as part of those discussions, Moscow and Beijing wanted to talk about trade and economic cooperation. We have heard the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi telling the Russian President Vladimir Putin during his meeting that China is ready to continue business cooperation with Moscow. We also believe that the two countries are aiming to increase their trade turnover to $200 billion a year. We have heard the Russian president set this goal back in 2018, and now this goal is being close to achieved. He also said before that in the first 6 months, the trade turnover between the two countries have reached $120 billion. So there are all grounds to believe that this figure will be achieved. And also, very importantly, as a result of all the negotiations that Wang Yi did have in Russia, we have heard the Russian president now confirming that Moscow and Beijing do stand from a similar position when it comes to the establishment of the multipolar world. Now, this is very important because Moscow has been maintaining that this world is in the making. It is the Western countries that are trying to impede this process. And with regards to the unity of these two countries, as they have declared before, the no-limit partnership, it is very important that they are looking to the things from one angle. And that has been stressed pretty much in all of the meetings that Wang Yi had in Moscow.
All right, another thing that Russia has also confirmed is that President Putin will visit China next month. Given that the last time he was in China was 3 weeks before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, what is the significance of this trip more than a year after that invasion?
Well, that's right. The Kremlin has once again confirmed the plans of the Russian president to travel to China for the third edition of the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. And that will be the return visit this year, because earlier Xi Jinping, the president of China, traveled to Moscow for the consultations and negotiations with the Russian president Vladimir Putin. So certainly this visit will be very significant in terms of the bilateral relations, and in terms of beefing up and giving a new impetus to those ties. President Putin said that the visit of Xi Jinping has given the impetus, but now that will be given even more energy to the bilateral relations. But at the same time, importantly, this visit will be the first foreign trip for the Russian president since the issue of the ICC warrant. And even though China is not a party to the ICC, the understanding is that indeed for the Russian president, it is important to make this trip and to highlight and to stress to the rest of the world that these two countries do stand together. We have seen actually before more visits by the international leaders, more trips and negotiations. The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, was in Russia earlier this month, and the expectation is that the Russian president will also be traveling to the North Korea. So certainly the understanding is that Russia wants to beef up new partnerships and to strengthen the ties that Moscow believes are friendly and reliable.
Thanks for that. Dasha Chernyshova reporting live from Moscow.